Been waiting in the water, just trying to survive. But God said there's more for me, more than staying alive. I'm stepping into power, into what was always mine. Divine joy rising, it's my time to shine.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I feel like I haven't seen y'all in a long time. Anyway, my name is Diane Butts, and I am a daughter of divine joy, and so are you. Okay, and then you know what? I know we have men who watch this show. You're sons of divine joy. Okay, so we're going to get started today, and we're talking about love. We're still talking about love. Love is revolutionary. Um, and you can catch one of my latest blogs on the PA Empowerment website. As soon as I give it to Kindle to post, which will be today, so you can read it. And it'll go a little further into this, but I just want to talk about the kind of love that we share amongst each other as family members. And sometimes we don't just reserve that type of love for family. And I don't know about you, but my family is extensive. It's not just the people that were born with the same last names as me, but it's also people in my community who are sisters or brothers to me, or like cousins. So that term family is expansive, and it has many different meanings. So there is the kind of love that we give one another, and I want to talk about that in the relationship that I had with a little 9-year-old girl who became my daughter. And she taught me, she really taught me how to love. You learn how to love in your family, through your parents loving you, but it's a whole nother thing when you become a parent. You learn how to love in a different way. And it's an important way too, because you're shaping and forming this person that you're loving. And so you want your love is never perfect, I don't believe, but unless it comes from God. But love is healing, and love is forming, and it shapes you. And so you want it to be healthy love. You want it to be compassionate love. You want it to be generous love. You want it to be something that is going to pour into the person you're loving and have them grow and become what they were purposed to be because of the love that you offered them. So, about 26 years ago, I was working at a school in Paterson, New Jersey, as a school social worker, and the vice principal asked me to speak to this little girl. She was in the third grade at the time. And I said, I don't have time to talk to no little girl. Okay. I don't have time. I got all these kids. I was on a child study team. I had a caseload that was so heavy, and I just didn't have time. And she wasn't on my caseload, or, one of the new kids we were evaluating. I didn't have time. But one day, walking past our classroom, and the spirit just whispered, go in there and ask about Marquita Hill. So I did. And that began that first day. That first day, she and I just formed a bond that was going to be unbreakable. She came by to see me every day. She'd bring me little pictures that she drew. She would even take a paper clip and open it up and etch drawings into her little styrofoam plate that they gave them. It wasn't a plate, but it was a little tray they gave them their food on in the cafeteria. She would make pictures out of that. She would do all kinds of things. She would bring her friends by to say hi to me. And so this little girl and I just formed this relationship. And I later found out that she had a caseworker. Now, at the time, I was in let me see. I had just maybe taken my third or fourth class to be a foster parent, and had just come to the realization that I wasn't infant material. Okay. I had no children. I could not have children. I thought I wanted a baby and to raise a child from a baby, but as I sit in those classes and they talked about stuff like potty training and teething, I was like, that doesn't sound exciting to me, and I can skip that part. Where are the children that can make their own cereal on Saturday morning? That's what I need. I need a child that's older. So I had just come to that realization, and here this little girl comes into my life, um, and we get to know each other. And I think the second time I talked to her caseworker, I found out that her home was unstable. They wanted her evaluated because they felt like maybe she had some kind of emotional disturbance or some kind of imbalance. But we did take a look at some. They had some tests taken, and so we looked at the tests that they had that had been performed on her. We looked at the test results and decided, this kid may not have the strongest language skills. She is her intelligence level, I think, was just a little below average, but not so below that she needed to be classified. And we just figured whatever we were seeing with her was environmental. So we didn't think she needed to be classified. So I started inquiring more and more about her to find out about her home and how it was going, where her mother was at, where were they in the process of uh, reunification, because usually that's what they want to do. And I needed to know if that was going to happen, because the one thing I knew, if I adopted a child, it couldn't have been just foster. It had to be foster adopt. The child had to be available for adoption. The child needed to be able to be my child. Because once she started living with me, there was not going to be any letting go. Okay. They would probably have to have helicopters over my house and a SWAT team to come get this child because I wouldn't let her go. But anyway, I digress. Let me finish the story. So, she comes to live in my house. They told me, well, we have to wait until your certification goes through. I said, mm-hmm. And then maybe that might not be until October, November, because they're backlogged. I said, uh-huh. Okay. And they gave me this whole thing. And I said, okay. Now, what they didn't know, I had already gone to God. I had already prayed. I had asked God to have her in my house before the end of June so that we could have July and August without school, just to get to know each other and enjoy time together. Um, so here it is, beginning of June, they're telling me that's not going to happen. And I just said, okay. And I began to do the things one of a person who has faith. I set her room up. I bought furniture for her room. I didn't know her favorite color, so I didn't buy a comforter set, but I painted the room. I got everything ready for her. They called me on the 25th and said, "Listen, there's an emergency." Uh-huh. Her aunt who was taking care of her, she's leaving to go to South Carolina and she's not taking Marquita. Okay. And they said, well, we're going to put her in your home. I said, okay. Well, you got to have a bed. You got to have this. I said, okay. And they said, you're ready? I said, yes. But we told you couldn't have her until November. I said, nobody listening to y'all. I asked God. God said it was going to happen. And so they were like, okay. Well, we're going to get somebody right over there and, inspect your home. They did all that. The next day they had somebody in there. Now all of a sudden they can move fast, right? So June 29th, I went and picked her up at the office of the Child Protective Services in Patterson, and she became mine. And so this administrator, the one who asked me to talk to her, I saw her over the summer. I was so excited. And I said, "Oh," I called her by her name. I said, "Oh, I'm so glad I ran into you. I wanted you to be the first to know that I I am Marquita's mother now. I took her into my home. I'm fostering her. She will probably be available for adoption very soon, and we're going to be mother and daughter. And she looked me in my face and said without blinking, "Why would you take that horrible child into your home?" Well, baby, I didn't cut her, but I was sure angry. I was so upset. By the way, Kat, I heard you like my show. Thank you for listening. And Mrs. J. McCall, hi, how are you? I'm so sorry. Let me finish this story. And so I kind of looked at her and I said, she's not a horrible child. She's a child who's had horrible things happen to her. And as I was thinking about that recently, I just really remembered, you know what? Love is really a revolution, an act of revolution. Because here it is that this grown woman could only see the behavior of the child and determine what the child was, which was horrible, based on her behavior in school. Never asked. Now, she knew she was in a foster home. Never asked what's going on in the foster home that's making her act like this. What has happened to her in the past that may have her acting like this? Nothing like that. No compassion whatsoever. And I'm sitting there wondering, lady, what happened to you that would make you look at a 9-year-old child and be ready to throw them away by calling them horrible? As if that meant she was unlovable or didn't deserve love, or as if that meant there was no hope for her. That's what I mean about Christians sometimes. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there because, she's no longer with us anymore. God rest her soul. But I'm realizing now that what I did was an act of revolution. I saw a little girl who was hurting, who had pain, who had been abandoned, disappointed, not treated with the love she should have had because her parents were struggling with addiction and unable to give her that love. And so as I got to know her, I got to see beyond and underneath that pain. And when you do that, when you can actually not look at how the person is acting towards you and understand that it is pain that's you are seeing right now, love becomes a revolution because you start looking deeper and deeper and deeper into that person because you're searching for something to love. You're searching for that part of God, the imago Dei. You want to see God in that person. And so you begin to look beyond the things that have happened, beyond the talking back, beyond the fighting. Because I'm going to tell you, that girl used to fight me. She pulled a knife on me one time and said she was going to cut me. And I looked at her, I said, really? And where will you be sleeping tonight? Because I'm going to be here. And if you cut me, I'm going to call the people who brought you here. And then they're going to take you out my home for fear of what I might do to you. And she looked at me. Well, I'm not going to cut you this time. And I'm thinking to myself, and near another time, will you cut me? And I never hid the knives after that. I didn't do any of that. I have friends that said to me, you don't have to keep her. It's all right. Every child isn't, a good fit. So, and I would look at them and say, and which one of your 3 children would you give away? There was a commitment that was made to love this child, a commitment to love the hell out of her because I know she had been through hell. And love can do that. Love, what's it? And I don't even think it's a biblical scripture that love covers a multitude of sins. It's not that love covers them, love changes those things. Love transforms them. Every June 29th or somewhere around that date, my daughter and I celebrate being mother and daughter. It's been 26 years now. She's 35 years old. And as much as I would say to her, I am not one of your little friends, I'm one of her little friends now, or she's one of my little friends. And it's a beautiful thing, but it was because of love. And we need to remember that when we're raising people who are going through difficult times, when we're loving or in relationship with people who have experienced trauma, because sometimes they're triggered by that. It may start acting all kinds of ways, what we call acting funny, or she switched up on me, or I don't even know who you are anymore. There are things that are beneath that. People just don't up and start acting funny out of nothing. Something's going on. And love doesn't abandon you when you got something going on. Not real love. Love does not walk out on you. Now, I'm talking about when you're able to really love somebody because you know who they are and they love you as well. So I'm not talking about these relationships that are not mutual. I'm not talking about relationships that are abusive or one sided. I'm talking about healthy relationships where we are loving one another. And I'm also talking about relationships where sometimes the other person isn't capable of returning the love that you give to them, but you give it anyway. You love them through what they're going through. And only you can decide how long you're going to be there with them. Only you can decide when you've given all that you can give and maybe it's time to step away. Only you know what your limits are in that situation. And for this child in this situation, I didn't have any limits because she was my child, because she was my gift that God gave me. There was no limitations. I would move heaven and earth for her, still would. I remember when I moved her from the Patterson school system to the school system in Summit, New Jersey. Summit is a very affluent city, small city, but a lot of affluent people live there. Nice school system, but it wasn't a whole lot of us. Um, and I remember when I went to the school to register her first day of school, I went in to see the principal. I made an appointment and I was explaining to her who Marquita was, what she had been through, that she was living with me now. I was mothering her. And, just a little bit of background so she could understand who she was. And I said, this environment is very different from the environment. There are not a lot of people who look like her. I don't know how she's going to respond. I don't know what parts of her will resist. So these are things to just look out for. And I'm asking for your patience. And she said, I don't think there'll be any problems. Our students are so tolerant. I think she'll be fine. And I said, hmm, I wonder how she'll feel being tolerated all day long. And the lady said, oh my, that was not a good thing to say. I said, no, it wasn't. I said, I'm sure that children are understanding. I'm sure that they might even be tolerant. However, she needs friends. Everyone wants to feel like they belong. And I don't want to have to twist herself into pretzels to belong. Okay. This lady was so generous and so kind to my daughter. She stayed after school when she was having problems. She would help her. She tutored her herself. Um, and so did a lot of other teachers. And so it came to the point where we decided, you know what, let us I called it protective custody, but we had her evaluated and were able to classify her based on a communication impairment. And really, the impairment was nobody had ever read to her. She didn't get enough books when she was in school in Patterson, and she didn't get any books at home. And so I started this quest. We would spend time at Barnes and Noble. We would go to the library, and I just started reading, 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 reading. This is what love does. Love transforms a girl who was on the border of actually was below average and scored at below average intelligence for IQ being raised 20 points, which is like not really heard of. But her IQ jumped 20 points by the time she was in the 8th grade. And my girl was right at the cusp of above average. And I said, okay. And that helped me to see that when it comes to nature versus nurture, nurture can win each and every time if you're loving hard enough, if you're loving with consistency, if you're loving with compassion, if you're loving with patience, if you're loving with hope, if you're loving with faith that God is there in every moment, every instance, providing everything you need when you need it. And I'm telling you, I'm a witness to that from childcare to sometimes even money. Just get a phone. I was thinking about you. What does Marquita need? People that didn't even know her that well, but they knew me and they wanted to help. Marquita was carrying burdens she should never had to carry. But that did not mean she was a horrible child. She acted out her behaviors because sometimes she was just not seen by people. She might have been judged because her hair wasn't combed, or maybe she was a little too ashy. But that was not her fault. She was a child who needed to be cared for, as we all need to be cared for at I don't care what age you're at. And so maybe because I was a pastor, maybe because I'm a social worker at heart, maybe because I was just a mother from the time I was born. I saw different. So I want to encourage you when you get into difficult situations with people, don't throw them away because love can change things. Love is a revolution. Revolutions are started when you refuse to accept things as they are. When you challenge assumptions, when you disrupt old narratives, when you create the possibility of a different future, that is a revolution. At their best, revolutions are not driven by destruction, but by transformation. And that's what happened with this child. That's what happens in communities when people get together and start working together to solve the solutions and problems in their community. I was listening to a talk radio show today, and the lady was talking about how the kids were wilding out so bad in school that a bunch of fathers and community leaders, men, came into the school and started patrolling the hallways until there was order. until the expectation of order was so drilled into these children's heads, they didn't dare think about roaming the hallways anymore. They didn't dare think about running up and down the hallway like they didn't have no sense. They didn't dare think about having fights in the middle of the hallway. They stopped doing it because that was not the expectation. The expectation was given to them that we are a community and we are to love one another, to care for one another, and we act in accordance with those feelings and thoughts. We act to take care of one another, and you don't take care of people by running through the hallway. You don't care for people by having fights and fist fighting each other. You don't care for one another by just wilding out in the hallways. That's not what we're here for. That's not what school is. And so they taught the kids the order they needed to learn in order to do what the adults wanted them to do. That's revolutionary. Being revolutionary doesn't mean you got to get out on the streets with guns. What it means is that you need to change mindsets about who people think they are. I remember eating in front of my children one day. We went to a museum in DC, and we were eating, and I had some chicken, and I think it was a piece of like a chicken cutlet or something that was fried, and I took my knife and cut it, and one of the kids said, "Why you trying to eat like you white?" I said, "Excuse me? How does somebody eat like they white? Like you using a knife and fork? That's a piece of chicken. Just pick it up with your hands. That's how we do." I said, "We who? Black people." And I said, "Okay. Well, this particular piece of chicken, I'm choosing to eat with a knife and a fork. And if I were home, I'd be doing the same thing. And I'm sorry, whatever it is you think Black people do, why are you limiting yourself to something that all of us have to do? Because I ain't doing that." And so it's interesting how we think about who we are, and those thoughts get projected into how we move in this world. Eating with a knife and fork isn't just for white people. We can any of us can do that. Yes, my heart aches for them too. Thank you, Racy Miller. Thank you for that comment. Because so many of our children, so many of our parents are so torn in different directions. So many of them are trying to live the youth that was stolen from them or they gave away. So many of them are running behind relationships and men who don't really care about them. Children. Working as a school social worker, I would hear somebody say, "Oh, she's 12 years old. There's nothing I can say to her now. She's gonna do what she want to do." In your house, really? You allow that? Because ain't no 12-year-old gonna do what they want to do in my house. And so when we let our kids go, we just give them to the world and let the world do whatever the world wants to do. Love is different. And it doesn't ignore the damage. It doesn't deny that the wounds are real. It doesn't do any of those things. But it realizes that beneath that there is a life beyond the wound, that there is healing that can happen. The adoption was not the gift that I gave my daughter. What I gave my daughter was seeing all that she could be, not treating her like she was nothing until she became that, treating her like she was already that. After she was classified and placed in a special ed program, I made sure she was at every meeting that we ever had about her. And they would say, well, she's so young. She doesn't need to be here. This is her diagnosis. This is her learning difference. She needs to understand it. She needs to hear us talk about it because she has to own it and she has to work with it. By the time she got in high school, she was empowered enough to ask for meetings, to change her IEP, to modify certain things that she was going to have in a classroom. And by the time she got to college, she was able to advocate for herself so much that she didn't need a written IEP in college because she knew how to prove to her professors that she could do the work. She would do twice the work. I'm going to do the assignment as you tell me to do it, and I'm going to do the assignment in a way that I can understand it, that I can really express to you that I understand. And she would do to hand in two assignments. And they got to respect that. So much so, they would ask her and chime and tune in with her and say, "How is this for you? Do you need any kind of modification?" She actually taught people how to love her, how to care for her, what she needed. And I'm glad. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that she learned that. I'm proud I was able to give her that. And so, with the young people that we love and the older people, because sometimes people come out of bad marriages that they've been in for decades, and they need to know that they are worthy of love, that they're worthy of friendship, that they matter, and that you see them. And guess what? It doesn't take anything away from you to do that. I'm not telling you to be a doormat for them. I'm not telling you to lay down your life and do everything for them. I'm saying friendship, honest, warm, compassionate, loving friendship. The kind that says, I see you. I hear you when you speak. You sound so upset. Those are the kinds of things. Yes, Racy. Yes. They need to learn responsibility. We have to let them do that. Oh, I let my daughter stew in some mess she got herself in. I let her stew. Thank God I was a member of the community. I was involved in some aspects of the community that allowed me to be able to get into these situations and know different people and get them to work with me to teach her a lesson. Oh yeah, honey, I let her sit there and cry her eyes out because you need to learn. You have to be responsible. You have to take care of yourself. And the child that I was fighting for, the child that I kept telling them she was, the child that I kept advocating for, finally showed up. Her senior year of high school, when we were doing her last IEP, and she got up to go, they asked her to go get a teacher. And they had been talking about how highly organized she was, and all these other wonderful it was just a glowing narrative about who she was as a learner. And when she got up to go get the other teacher, I leaned in and I said, "Okay, y'all, I was on child study team and I used to write these reports too, and I know sometimes you would just cut and paste and change a few things around. Are you really talking about another child and you just like cut and paste and put Marquita's name on here?" And they were like, "Miss Anderson, this is true. We wrote this about Marquita because this is who she is." And I just leaned back on my child. I said, "My God, she's really organized." They said, "Miss Anderson, the little girl that you always fought for, that you said that this is how she can do, she did it. She finally became the person you said she was. She believes it now." And that's what it's all about. If you love someone enough, they will actually believe they're worthy of the love. They'll start believing that they are that person. They turn into that person because you're expecting them to be that person. I'm not saying we have the ability to change people. We can't do that. They have to change themselves, but she did. She did. She went from, I ain't going to no damn college. That's what she said to me. I ain't pop her. But she said, I ain't going to no damn college. I said, okay, you ain't got to go, but you got to get out here and work. You're going to do something because you're not sitting up here watching TV or playing video games. That's what you're not going to do. And you're going to pay rent. We went from that her sophomore year to in high and between the junior and senior year, she went on this trip. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of kids she went on this trip with came from homes that were more affluent than ours. And she became friends with, she's still in contact with many of the kids that she went on that trip with. And she got to go to Fiji, Australia, and New Zealand. And when she got the letter inviting her to participate in this program, she was like, "Oh my God, mommy, this September when we started school, the teacher asked us to write about one place you would love to go. What is the top place on your bucket list?" And I put Australia. I can't believe I'm actually going to get an opportunity to go. And all I thought to myself is, I ain't got no Australia, Fiji money. And all I heard the guy say is, I got it. I got it. And so I'm telling you, love changes things. Love makes you believe in things. Yes, I borrowed some money. I raised money from the church. The church gave us $2,500. I couldn't believe that. And that was not from the church going into its writing a check. That was from people saying, we believe in this child. We want her to know we have her back. We want her to know we believe in her. And when she came back from that trip, she went to hang out with the friends that she was always hanging out with who wasn't going to college either. And I was so wanting to get her away from that group, but I couldn't. When you tell your kids not to hang out with people, they're the very people they're going to hang out with. So I never told her not to. But I'm telling you, after 2 weeks, she came back and she started hanging out with me. She'd be watching TV with me. She'd want to, talk about different things. Or, mommy, can we go such and such place? I'm like, okay. And I said, I thought you're not hanging out with your friends. And she's like, you know what I noticed, mommy? I went on that trip and I was away for 3 weeks. And when I came back, they were sitting in the same spots I left them in. It's like they never moved. Time changed. Time just it's 3 weeks later, they in the same place. I don't want to be in the same place for the rest of my life. Whew, God did that because that wasn't me. But it was the trip. It was the people she met. It was her being around folks and saying, I'm here, the same place they're at. She saw something in herself. I went back to school for the back to school night, when they had open house, they call it. Yeah. I went for open house. When I went to stop in to say hi to her guidance counselor. Yes, it is wonderful, isn't it? I saw her guidance counselor and she says, "Oh my God, I can't believe what got into Marquita." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "She's applying to all these schools." I said, "Well, she told me she wasn't going to no damn college." She said, "Well, she's changed her mind." So I talked to her when I got home. I said, "I heard you're applying to school." She said, "Yeah, I figured I might as well try." I said, "Okay." And I'm going to tell you, one of her reach schools was Rutgers Mason Grove School of the Arts. Now, I started going to Rutgers right around the time I think Mason Gross was in its first year, my first year at Rutgers. I took a class in acting over there. But the one thing about Mason Gross, it was hard to get into. And I was like, when she told me she applied, I said, well, don't be don't be, shocked if you don't get in. It's really hard to get in. I know more people that got rejected than I know that actually went to Mason Gross. When she got that letter, she said, "Mommy, I'm in." I said, "In what?" "Rutgers." I was like, "No." She said, "Yes." I said, "No, get out of here. You got to Rutgers." She said, "Yes." We were so elated. We were so, so elated. And that, again, that took some more patience, some more love, some more encouragement, a lot of encouragement. And also a threat to, you know what, you got one more semester. I can't afford your social life right now because she's a social creature. I can't afford your social life. Either you're gonna make some grades and get out of there, or you can just come home and get a job because I'm not. This is your last chance. Oh, she said, well, I'm really feeling like I'm focused. I'm really focused, mom. Yeah, she was focused, all right. She was focused on everything but the books, but she did. She got better. She got through those next 2 years, and I was very happy, because, 5 years is not unusual for kids to sometimes take 5 years to go through school, but she did. And now she's doing her thing, living her life, working her job, going traveling, and it's a beautiful thing. But that transformation of what love did to her life is her witness that God is real. It's her witness that prayers are answered. And I remember when she taught me, I have always looked at the story of Peter walking on water, which, if you ever listen to the intro song, is talking about walking on water. Um, and I don't know if you hear that part, but anyway, um, I was talking about Peter, and I said to her, "Well, you have to have the faith that Peter had." Um, when Peter got out the boat and walked on water, she said, "Mm-mm. No, no, mommy." She said, "Peter, See, Peter got out in that water and he started looking everywhere else but at Jesus. I'm not doing what Peter did because that's why Peter started sinking. I'm looking at Jesus. I ain't trying to sink." And I just started laughing and I was like, "Oh, I didn't get that lesson." I said, "You know what? That's a nice perspective." And I'm glad that's what she took from it. Um, because sometimes we have to do things, and when we get distracted, yes, we may start sinking. And to her, it was the lesson she learned is don't take your eyes off of God when you were doing the impossible, when you were loving the most unlovable person, when you have befriended someone who doesn't even know how to act like a friend, when you have done everything that you can do, just keep loving. Love never loses, love never fails, love never fails. And even if you have loved someone who does not know how to love in return and it doesn't work out, the problem wasn't that you were loving. The problem was the person didn't know what to do with the love. Some people grow up so wounded that when they become adults, they're still children. And as much as we can love them, sometimes their head is wired so much out of trauma, had been rewired so much out of trauma, they don't trust love. They don't know what to do with love. They can't even receive love. And so, sisters and brothers, today's sermon was brought to you by love. No, it's real. Love is real, and it does so much, so much. Yes, 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 yes. That's right. It's in their hearts. And I'm going to tell you, my daughter, she's not a churchgoer, but she understands the word. She believes in it. She has her own relationship with God, and she allows God to lead her. I remember, and I'm going to tell you, I taught her how to discern the voice of God by listening to her, encouraging her to hear the still small voice that urges her to maybe stop and think, that's telling her a situation may not be what she thinks it is. Um, and that has guided her. But if I didn't listen to it when she says, "You know what? I wanted her to go by her friend's house and spend the weekend. She said, "Mommy, something in me just says I shouldn't be over there." And as much as it was an inconvenience, I changed my plans and I just didn't do what I was going to do because I heard what I heard God say. Don't send that child over there and something happens to her because you're not going to be able to forgive yourself. And her friend had an older brother. I didn't know anything about this dude. So I just said, you know what? Maybe I need to keep my daughter home. And I did. So I had to respect that voice and for her to learn to respect the voice. So you can't tell your kids listen to that voice, and then when they tell you about what the voice is saying to them, and hopefully they're not schizophrenic, when they would, and still you still got to listen to them. But you have to listen and respect what they're saying, what God is saying in them, how God is moving in them. You have to respect that, and sometimes that means changing your plans in order to accommodate whatever that was speaking to her. And she knows how to do it now. And she cares for people and she loves on people. She doesn't want to be a social worker or any kind of counselor, but if she wanted to, she could and do it well. And so I'm saying that to let you know that, baby, in this world today that is so full of hate, don't you let them make you think that that hate is stronger than the love you have in your heart. No, you don't have to be a fool for them. No, you don't have to let them run you over. No, you don't have to be a doormat for them. You can have boundaries and still love people. As a matter of fact, if you love them, you better have some boundaries because you don't want people to use you up. So, yes, there's a lot of hate in this world, but we're still going to be loving because in the end, love wins. God is love. God has never failed, and love has never failed. So keep loving, keep lifting people up, keep believing in community, keep believing in your own power to offer healing to another human being because you have the power. You have the power. And don't ever think that someone's beginnings are a prophecy about their ending. Mm-mm. You don't know what their end will be. You don't know the moment, the minute, the hour that God will deliver them from whatever pain they have been in. You don't know. And you cannot count anybody out. You cannot count them out. And if there are people that whose energy disturb me, I may still pray for them at a distance. And I will celebrate them from a distance. And I will encourage them from a distance, but I'll still pour into them. I may not be able to be around them all the time, but I don't mean them any harm. The easiest thing I can do is pray. And the most powerful thing I can do is pray. And so I do that. So me and Racy have had church today, and me and Racy are about to say goodbye. You all, it has been a pleasure being back here on the PA Empowerment Network. I will not be away that long again. I'm going to be away next month for 2 weeks, and I'm going to try to be here from wherever I'm going to be on vacation. I'm not going to tell you yet, but I'll just tune in, and we'll be about 6 or 7 hours from each other. But oh, wait a minute. I'm talking about getting up 5 o'clock in the morning. I should be able to do that. Yeah, I should be able to do that. God bless you too, Racy. Have a good night. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. See, y'all, more people should come on here and chat with me. I'm glad I was able to see it. Oh, this has been such a blessing. thank you so much for tuning in. I love you all. Believe me, I do, I do, I do. And there'll be some things that I have coming. I'm working on a an audio volume of I'm not going to say meditations. I'm calling them sacred pauses. Um, just me leading you and guiding you through some exercises where you can just stop, drop, and connect with God. And so I'll let you know in the future when they're ready. I'm looking to do it and have them ready by August 1st. So I'm in the stage of recording. So there'll be several